Have you ever seen anything like this? Look how cool this thing is. I'm amazed. Look. And it lights your candles. And you can charge it. I don't know. I'm excited about this. Hi, my name is Dasha. This is day 3 of my talking to the camera challenge that I want to do for 30 days. And today I forgot to film when it was still daylight. So we're gonna have a nice cozy evening chat. We've got a candle, We've only got a candle, we don't have anything else. This is very exciting actually because this challenge forces me to think of interesting topics of conversation that would stimulate me, that would excite me. So, is stimulate the right word for it? I don't know. Basically topics of conversation that are interesting to me. Today I want to talk about the challenges that we all face in our 20s. Now, I'm in my 20s, mid-20s, so obviously this video would probably be much more accurate if I recorded it 5 years down the line when I'm approaching 30 years old. But I'm not going to wait that long. In the future there will never be any disclaimers or trigger warnings in these videos because I just don't think this is necessary. We're all adults, we all know what we want and don't want to watch. I understand that we have all faced different challenges or facing different challenges, some of them much more significant than others, and I'm just basing this on my own experience and on the ones that I deem to be the most common for the age of 20 to 30. I feel like my voice is quieter just because I'm recording in the evening because it seems like almost bedtime to me. The first big challenge that I can think of is learning how to budget. I feel like all of us turning 20 something, you know, in our early 20s, this is the first big thing that we face coming to us from this adult world, like adulting 101. And whether we've, you know, started our first job or it's at university and it's a student loan that we have to stretch out to be able to live consistently on the same level. My situation was slightly different. I first started budgeting and looking after my money when I was a student, but because I was an international student in the UK, I couldn't take out a student loan. So it was not my money, it was the money that my parents were giving me for living expenses, for you know, food, rent, etc. I remember that after each term I would come back home to visit my family and we would sit down with my mom at some point and open up my bank account where my parents' money was that I was spending, and we would look at how much I'd spent and whether this was consistent with my, you know, weekly budget that I had for myself. And in the first couple of years I was really severely overspending. And I had to give this money back to my parents. So these times when mom and I would go through my banking and go through my spending would stress me out a lot. I was anxious a lot because I suspected for the first couple of years that I would overspend, and I was usually right. So this understanding of me having to give this money back from the next term and limit myself in some things was very stressful to me as a young adult. I didn't really know how to budget correctly, so that came with experience and with time. So when I was adhering to this budget for a long enough time, for 2 or 3 years, it finally became normal to me. I didn't have to think about how much I'm spending because I automatically would know how much I have left for this week, this month, etc. I know a lot of people face this issue only when they start on their first job, and usually the first job that we can find after university is not the most well-paid one. So I completely understand the struggle of having to learn to budget on a not so great salary at the very beginning of your adulthood, young adulthood years. Luckily, when I started on the first job, I already understood a little bit more about personal finance, saving, and so on. So it was a little bit easier on me because I could practice in advance. Some of us go on this first job straight after school, so they don't really have that opportunity. So it's a very steep learning curve, which I consider to be the first challenge that we face as adults in this world. Now, I've already spoken a little bit about that first job that we get, but securing it is actually another challenge that we face with no experience, no previous work experience. finding that first job can be very daunting for a lot of young adults out there, for a lot of 20-somethings. In addition to going to all the interviews and the stress that brings to a person who doesn't have that work experience, there's also a lot of pressure, I feel like, on young people to become independent as quickly as possible in life. And often we end up taking the job that we don't necessarily want as our first job, just to make sure that the money's coming in and that we're able to provide for ourselves. From my perspective, that wasn't really the challenge. The challenge was that, again, as an international student, a job is tightly related to the ability to stay in the UK. So with me, I had to find a job as quickly as I could, because after university I already had to be secured in a position in order to obtain that work visa. In second year of university I applied to loads of different internships, and that was added to, you know, the time that was already occupied by exam preparation, essay writing, etc. Plus obviously all the internship interviews, all the on-demand interviews, which is like when you answer questions and record yourself on video like I am doing right now. That terrified me at the time. As I said, I didn't really have experience of talking to a camera. So at least for international students in the UK, the timeline is already stricter than for everyone else, just because if they want to stay here and if they want to build their life here, they have to intensely apply to jobs before they even graduate. A year and a half before they graduate, they're already securing their internships to be able to pave that path towards the first position, which is usually on a graduate scheme. And I'm aware that I got it easier than many others, but nonetheless it was a lot of stress at the time, so that was a big challenge. Another difficult process that we face when we're in our 20s is becoming independent. And it might seem that securing that job and providing for ourselves financially is becoming independent. In my opinion, is only part of it. Learning how to live independently, learning how to do all the mundane things like doing our laundry and cooking, learning how to pay our taxes, and most of all learning how to not call our parents or a close relative every time we face a minor issue and solving it ourselves. That, in my opinion, is independence. That's when we become self-contained. That's when we can fully rely on ourselves. And it's very difficult, and I feel like this process is happening much later, a few years later at least, after we start earning our own money and providing for ourselves. And by 25, maybe 26, 27 for some people, they become fully independent and not relying even emotionally on anyone else to help them solve whatever problem they face. Despite the fact that I lived separately from my parents since the age of 14, I still felt very reliant on them emotionally, and the understanding that I can rely on myself and I can count on myself only came to me at about the age 23, 24. It's a process that all of us have to go through one way or another, knowing that making a mistake is not the end of the world, and even if we did, we can fix it. And getting there is difficult, but I feel like when we're thrown in an environment where there is no adult next to us to tell us what to do and to help us solve a problem, that you kind of learn to figure it out on your own. You Google it. I Googled it. I Googled how to make pelmeni. I Googled what fabrics are okay and not okay to put in the dryer. And through trial and error, this understanding that you can solve anything that comes your way comes, and that's when you become a fully independent person. A big difficulty that we face when we start socializing in our 20s is setting those boundaries. And what I mean by that is, from teenage years, there are people who are next to us who are not necessarily kind to us, who are not necessarily nice to us or good for our mental health, who don't respect the basic boundaries that each of us has. And before we mature, we have this tendency to keep talking to them just because we don't want to upset them, we don't want to make a scene, we don't want to be dramatic, and it's just easier to swallow whatever's been said or done and keep going like nothing happened. And this accumulates, this feeling of being hurt accumulates, this feeling of not being respected builds upon all of the things that have been said or done by these kind of people. It is very difficult, and it takes a lot of courage to talk to these people and explain to them why how they're treating you is not okay with you, how they're hurting you. And if they choose to ignore it and keep doing whatever they're doing that upsets you, it is even more difficult then to cut these people out of your life and not feel the guilt for it. And personally, I really, really don't like conflict. I don't like confronting people. So it's even more difficult to outline your boundaries like that and to have that conversation with them. But once you do, it really, really improves on your quality of life. The last one I want to address is a bit weird to be called a 20-something challenge, but it's probably more specific to me, and it's health challenges. I understand that for many people, health issues don't really come until they're 30-something, but if we face health challenges in our 20s, then that's the first time that we have to address them on our own without any support. When we were children and we would get ill, our parents would take us to the doctor. Our parents would explain the symptoms to the doctor, and we would just have to take the medicine that we would be given. So all the responsibility lies on the adult. So once you become that adult, that's when it becomes a challenge, because you have to take that responsibility for your own health. For example, last year I had to spend a fortune to fix my teeth. I called my mom to talk about it. She said financial literacy is when you fix all your dental issues when you're still living with your parents. I do agree. But on a serious note, I feel like it's when you face those health issues for the first time as a young adult, the challenge is to take that responsibility and to be able to provide necessary care to yourself. I think that'll be it for our little evening chat today. Hopefully next videos I will record during daylight, but no guarantees there. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye.